will sing Bhajan in praise of Adi Shankaracharya and for his teaching. Jaya 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 Hara 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 Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Shiva 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 Jagat Guru Jagadidamakhilam tavarupam Jagadidamakhilam tavarupam Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagadguru Sadrupoham Chidrupoham Sadrupoham Chidrupoham Tanmaya Nityananda Shivoham Tanmaya Nityananda Shivoham Tanmaya Nityananda Shivoham Tanmaya Nityananda Shivoham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagadguru Deho Naham Jivo Naham Deho Naham Jivo Naham Pratyagabhinnam Brahmaivaham Pratyagabhinnam Brahmaivaham Pratyagabhinnam Brahmaivaham Pratyagabhinnam Brahmaivaham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagadguru Jagadidamakhilam tavarupam Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagadguru Tatrupoham Chidrupoham Tanmaya Nanda Shivoham Tanmaya Nanda Shivoham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagadguru Deho Naham Jivo Naham Pratyagabhinnam Brahmaivaham Jaya 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 Hara 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 Shiva 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 Jagadguru Shiva 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 Jagadguru Shiva 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 Jagadguru सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भाम् शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ चिन्मयो नाम रूपस्य आनन्दो वै स्वभावतः वेदगीता समुद्धरता ज्ञानयज्ञव्रते स्थितः। ॐ चिन्मयं जीवनं यस्य स्मरणं यस्य चेतना ज्ञानदानं धृतिर्यस्य तस्य पादौ भजाम्यहम्। ॐ Yes.
Hari Om. Good morning to everybody. Hari Om and salutations. I welcome all of us to the 8th Bimonthly Vivek Chudamani Camp on the theme All Manifestations Absolute, covering verses 226 to 236. I would like to start with the summary of the previous camp. The last camp started with a brief introduction to Vivek Chudamani, which is the crest jewel of discrimination, and how it was a product of all of Sri Adi Shankaracharya's travels, debates, and teachings that was articulated towards the later part of his life. This was followed by a quick summary of verses 226, 227, and 228, where the principal points were this pure infinite consciousness, the reality, Sad Idam, Idam Sat, is of the nature of pure knowledge, and this alone exists everywhere in spite of the appearance of forms. The world of objects and forms, which are none other than Brahman, appears multiple because of misapprehension, a word referred to here in verse 227 as bhavana dosham. The pot and mud are not different from one another and follow the four laws of cause and effect. This was covered in verse 228. At the beginning of the camp last time, the part 1 of the camp last time, after these three, verse 229 was taken for consideration. केनापि मृद्भिन्नतया स्वरूपं घटस्य संदर्शयितुं न शक्यते अतो घटः कल्पित एव मोहात् मृदेव सत्यं परमार्थभूतम्. To begin with, the example of mirage was taken to help understand the difference between illusion and delusion. The difference is that illusion is in perception at the level of the sense organs, while delusion is in the mind. Because of delusion, activity that is actually correct appears incorrect, and activity which is incorrect appears correct, and illusion remaining the same and located at the senses, delusion of the mind can still be resolved with discriminatory effort. These three principles are applied to the phenomenon of mirage, and three visions were analyzed. The first vision was the vision of the stag deer, where there is illusion as well as delusion, illusion in the perception as well as delusion in the mind, because of which the stag meets its unfortunate fate. In comparison, in the Manushya Drishti, compared to Mruga Drishti, in the Manushya Drishti, man says, don't assume what is perceived is real, subject it to inquiry and see if it is real. Hence, in spite of experiencing the same illusion at the sensory level, the action is different and the stag's unfortunate fate is avoided. And the third drishti which was analyzed was Bhanu Drishti, the vision of illumination. This is the last perfect vision, that is of the sun, where the sunlight and the heat of the sun causes the mirage, but the sun itself is neither concerned with the man, the deer, the desert, and much less the water in this process. If we extend this logic to the world of objects and forms and our experiences, all the worldly gains that we are chasing are subject to loss, and thus they are relative gains. After a long spell of being under the delusion that these gains will make us happy, when a person asks what is the one gain which is not subject to loss, he begins an inquiry into the nature of the self, and the self is the raw material which is never subject to loss, after which there is nothing further to be gained. An inquiry into the pot. At this point, the pot inquiry is taken up. An inquiry into the pot in terms of what is the pot made of, where from does the pot come, will get us to the mud, which is the core material of the pot. The same inquiry is now being extended about the world in terms of what are the causes of the world, and that will help us with an understanding of what is real and apparent. How does this inquiry progress? The first stage of this inquiry is progressive objectification of the world across the levels of the sense organs objectifying the world, the mind objectifying the sense organs, and finally the subject which is not available for objectification, the sad-idam, objectifying the mind as well. However, this stage of the subject, the sad-idam, objectifying the mind and the flow of thoughts is something that we have to take up for much deeper consideration, which is coming a little later. Thus, the pot with some limited utility is imaginary, because what is subject to appearance is also subject to disappearance. And the objective of this verse 229 is to look for the material cause of the pot, the mud, which is the only reality, while the pot itself is an imagination. Now, there is one point which is taken up here, which is that this example of pot and mud is still limited in its role to drive the seeker's understanding, because while in case of pot and mud, the mud is only the material cause for the pot, in case of the world, Brahman is both the material as well as the efficient cause. And this part needs to be kept in perspective while we analyze this example further. This was completed in the part 1 of the camp, and in part 2 of the camp, this was taken in further detail and depth. The verse says, nobody can prove that the pot is anything other than the mud. To analyze what are the contents of any one particular product, there are two methods available. The first is we understand from the method of analysis what all constituents go into the product, and we say that this product is constituted by these raw materials. The second method is the synthetic method, and to understand the synthetic method, the example of water was taken. We can analyze water and understand that water consists of hydrogen and oxygen. But if we were to prove that water is comprised of nothing else but hydrogen and oxygen, then the way to prove it is by the synthetic method, where we take hydrogen and oxygen in its required proportion, and we prove that water is created by just these two constituents. If water is the product of these two constituents, then there is nothing more required for water to be created other than hydrogen and oxygen. Now, if we extend this logic to the mud pot example itself, someone may point out that the pot is not exactly the mud because water was required while making the pot. This argument is a little fallacious because the water is not a constituent of the pot. It is only an aid for fabrication. The function of the water is only to make the mud pliable. After the pot is made and baked, the water also disappears from it. It simply gets evaporated. So water is an aid. Now let us just extend this example of water being an aid and understand the implications in case of mud pot and also the world around us. Mud is the one cause which has a multitude of effects around it. The same mud can become multiple Diwali diyas. It can become a pot for planting a plant, or it can become a ghatam for storing water. But all of these are basically manifestations of the different imaginations of the pot maker. Mud being the same, all of this diyas, the flower pot or the ghatam are basically manifestations of the potter's imagination that gets applied onto the mud. Similarly, all forms that we experience in the world around us are equal to existence plus consciousness. Consciousness is basically the imagination of different things. It is termed Maya. The word Maya was taken into detailed analysis here. Yama sa Maya, that which is not. Brahman is the material cause and Maya is just the imagination, kalpana. One mention which was made is that is the reason why the starting of creation is termed as kalpadi and the ending of creation is termed kalpanta. Now, to explain this yama sa maya, the example of mathematics was taken where we in algebra we assume the answer to be x. We use x till we get the answer and then we discard of x. X has no role in the answer itself. The answer is never x, but x helps us to get to the answer. And to further explain this, the story of the king who had 3 sons and 17 elephants, who wanted to split the 17 elephants, 1/3, 1/2, and 1/9 was taken. The minister introduces the 18th elephant, smoothly ensures the division, and after the division is complete, he takes away the 18th elephant. This 18th elephant is the Maya. This 18th elephant in the mud pot example is similar to the imagination. That is the one thing which does not constitute any of the product, but it is required to define the product and give it its name and form. So Brahman, in the Brahman, Maya is just like imagination. The important point to note here is that Brahman exists irrespective of whether Maya is manifest or not. When Maya manifests, it is called Brahma Maya. When Maya does not manifest, it is simply called as Parabrahma. Like a pot maker with multiple ideas takes the mud and molds it into different shapes and forms, similarly, the one Brahman has many effects, both in terms of multiplicity and variety. Here, the second interpretation of Maya was taken and analyzed further. Avidya is na vidyamana, that which is not present. Absence of vidya is called avidya. And here, the different role of Maya at the totality level versus individual level was analyzed in further detail. At the totality level, Maya as imagination makes multiple names and forms appear from the same primordial cause, which is the Brahman. But at the level of the individual, what happens is the same Maya, once the veiling of ignorance is complete, it introduces a thought. Now, this thought in its constituents and definition was taken into very detailed analysis. So Maya introduces a thought in the intelligence of the intellect. The intelligence is all light. In that light, a form is introduced. This form is nothing but consciousness plus a given thought form, whereas existence is the substratum on which this idea of thought can be projected and superimposed. Now, just to explain this part of how a thought is superimposed on the substratum, which is Brahman, the example of wave on water is taken. And to put it succinctly, the wave is born in the water, grows in the water, declines in the water, gets destroyed in the water. The wave by itself is only name and form superimposed on the substratum of water. Without water, the wave has absolutely no existence. If we take these three principles in terms of wave and water, it is easy to comprehend in terms of wave and water, but it is tricky when it comes to analyzing ourselves. From the vast expanse of consciousness, which is the totality, of which a ray of consciousness is reflected within our intellect, at that stage, just in the process of reflection of that ray of consciousness, it is formless. It is completely formless. The medium of reflection is intellect, and this reflection is termed intelligence. In this medium, the person has the capability to become conscious of the thought that rises in the intellect through its illumination in the light of intelligence. This thought rises in the consciousness, is sustained by the consciousness, and gets resolved back into the consciousness. So applying the same example of wave and water, the thought is nothing but pure consciousness plus name and form. Then the question comes, why thought? Why does it arise? This is mithya. The thought essentially is mithya, and this part was further taken up for a discussion. The self, like we discussed earlier, is available in us as pure consciousness. It is reflected in the intellect as intelligence, and in the light of intelligence, the thought is illumined. With the help of the scriptures and the teacher, when a seeker starts his inquiry, the practice of meditation is introduced. Now, what happens in the seat of meditation, and what is the meditation guidance here? A mind disengaged from the world of objects, emotions, and thoughts, which is the entire external world for us, is termed as quiet and calm. This is one of the major prerequisites for meditation, and this needs repeated practice because the mind is not very accustomed to not being engaged with the worlds of objects, emotions, and thoughts. Once it is disengaged from the world of objects, emotions, and thought, a thought of the self is given to the mind to contemplate upon. Now, the mind is, so here the mind has two problems. The first problem is an externally focused mind is being driven internally. And second, the thought of the self is very subtle. And both of these factors put together create fatigue for the mind. That's the reason meditation is a matter of repeated practice. And those seekers who find that we tend to fall asleep during meditation, it's a sign that tamas quantum is higher, which means there needs to be more selfless service to increase the level of sattva so that we stop sleeping in meditation. Now, in the seat of meditation, once the mind has been disengaged completely from the world of OET and a thought of the self is given to the mind, before the fatigue of the mind arrives, I have the capability to order a stop to this contemplation. At the time that I order a stop onto this contemplation, the thought is no longer there, and the mind becomes completely free from thought. Now, this state of the mind, which is completely free from thought, is similar to the deep sleep state in the sense that both of these states are free from thought, but is different from the deep sleep state because in the meditation, the seeker is aware of all of this happening, while in deep sleep state, he is not aware of all of this happening. When this thought is completely relinquished and the mind becomes completely free of thought, I'm quoting exact words now, this invisible light of consciousness in the mind becomes effulgence, and I become aware of the consciousness of this light of consciousness. I become conscious of this light of consciousness, which is manifest in the mind, which is free from thought. And at that stage, there is a spontaneous identification with the light of intelligence as myself. And this is the net import of the mud and pot example. And this is also the starting, this is also the point of discussion of the Mahavakya, Prajnanam Brahma. Now, this state of mind being free of thought is not a natural condition for the mind. The mind is an equipment which is made to hold thoughts and to have a stream of thoughts. But the reason I subject the mind to this exercise is because it gives me an opportunity to analyze myself when I'm completely free of thoughts. What does it mean when I'm completely free of thoughts? And can a thinker be without thoughts? The answer is yes. When I am completely free of thoughts, I don't cease to exist. What remains is I am. And in that I am, the amness is existence. I is a conscious existence. And here I realize that I am essentially existence consciousness, available as consciousness, reflecting as intelligence. So I'm only the light, and the thought is nothing but this light, which is me, plus name and form. The name and form do not have any other contents apart from the light of consciousness. And both of these aspects are particularly important because of my identification of this light of consciousness. For the seeker, what is the real benefit here? So we have done all of this exercise, right? We are analyzing thought is basically name and form plus consciousness. We are also seeing how the mind can experience this. Why? Because the stage of objectifying the thought and relinquishing the thought is a very difficult stage to acquire in sadhana. And once this is appreciated, it gives me the capability to identify the thought as it rises, objectify the thought, and deal with the thought as not myself. Otherwise, the normal scenario is that I am my thoughts. But to come to the point that I am not my thoughts and the thoughts arise in me differently is the object of all of this exercise. This is the net import of the pot and mud example, that Brahman is the raw material and Maya the pure knowledge, objectless infinite awareness, which when comes out is infinite objectless awareness, which illumines the entirety independently, and then becomes the light of consciousness which pervades the entire world. A ray of this consciousness enters the intellect as intelligence and illumines the entire set of thoughts in my head. Everything that is illumined is fake, while that which illumines is the reality, and that illumination is the nature of the Brahman, the material cause, is one without a second. Maya, which is pure knowledge and inherent power of the Brahman, reflects the Brahman and associates with the reflection. At that stage, it becomes all-pervasive awareness. And in reality, there is nothing other than the existence, Sat, consciousness, Chit, Atma. So Satchit Atma, and the existence remains ever as eternal existence. But the pure knowledge, which is the nature of the Brahman, becomes infinite consciousness of or awareness, which then evolves the thought. After the first thought comes the second thought. The first thought comes out, gets objectified. The moment there is objectification of first thought, space is created because there is subject and object duality. And after the first thought, when the second thought comes, time is created because between these two thoughts, there is the gap. Once space and time are created, all the raw material required for the multiplicity of objects that is required is available here. And the main theme of this verse 229 is that nobody can prove that there's anything additional in the in the pot than the mud. And the pot is imaginary while the mud is only real. The ultimate reality of the world is nothing but pure consciousness. And what we see in the world externally is nothing but pure consciousness illumining all forms. And that pure consciousness is not different from the existence of the Brahman, in which it exists eternally as peace or silence, as it is experienced in the seat of meditation. After this, verse number 230 was taken. Since the effect is nothing but the cause in another form, we can say that the universe is nothing but the Brahman alone in several forms. The universe is Brahman, and that alone, Chinmatram is the term which is taken for detailed analysis over here. And the question that arises is, did the mud automatically evolve and become the pot? No, it didn't. It required the potter's intelligence and imagination to drive it. So here, similarly, the pure knowledge itself, which has come out in form of Chit Shakti, and later on the imagination of the consciousness. It's very important to understand that when we say imagination, it applies only to Samashti. At the individual level, it is basically just avidya. So imagination as the power of Maya exists only at the Samashti level. All the forms can be resolved to Chinmatra or pure knowledge only. So pure knowledge is nature of the Brahman. The truth of Brahman is absolute existence. And in this shloka, verse 230, when Sad-Brahma is mentioned, the real Brahman referred here means reality as Brahman, which is called pure knowledge or infinite consciousness. And there is nothing apart from this infinite all-pervasive consciousness in the entire world of multiple forms. Here the example of child blowing the bubbles with soap water is taken, and the child is just doing it as a sport. There are some small bubbles, there are some large bubbles, and if we take those bubbles too seriously, we might think that this bubble is sad because it is small, this bubble is happy because it is large. And similarly, the application for us in our daily life is, if the objects, people and thoughts and experiences in the external world are scaring us and troubling our mind too much, then it is time to think afresh of our ideas about ourselves and the world under the guidance of the teacher and scriptures. At this stage, questions from the audience were invited. There were 3 questions. First question was, what was the difference between Brahman and Parabrahma? When Maya is manifest, it is called Brahma Maya, and when Maya is unmanifest, it is called Parabrahma. The second question was, the pot maker is not concurrent with the pot, but the sankalpa of the pot maker goes into the pot. So can we say that the sankalpa is concurrent with the pot? Here a detailed explanation was taken in terms of what is the limitation of this example. And the limitation of this example is that when we talk about Brahman, the intelligent cause, the efficient cause and the material cause have to be from the same source, and there cannot be any time gap, because the moment there is a time gap, there is a problem. Like, where was Brahman before the world was created? He was in heaven. Where did the heaven come from? That is an infinite series of thought. So the limitation of the pot mud example vis-a-vis the example of Brahman and the world is that Brahman is the intelligent and the material cause of the world, or both in the same place. The reference was made to the spider example also, which is taken to give similarly, except for the fact that the spider also dies in its own web, while there is no question of death for the Brahman anywhere, right? The net import of the mud and pot example is the example of samavayi karanam, that which is the material concurrent cause. Finally, there was the question on quietening the mind and making it calm. How do we compare the calm mind with a mind in deep sleep? And here the 3 levels of Shanti were taken: Shanta, Prashanta and Paramashanta. When the mind completely excludes the world of OET, it becomes calm and quiet. That is Shanta. When this calm and quiet mind engages in contemplation of nature of the self, it is termed Prashanta. And when this peaceful mind is led further, where it realizes spontaneously the effulgence which is its own true nature, it is called Paramashanta. Now the word here used during the class is, I spontaneously identified with it as myself. Then that is the state wherein I experience the silence. And the word experience is without the experiencer triad. It is the unity with the silence and the identification with the silence straight away. And this silence belongs to the objectless infinite awareness. Hari Om.
That was a very good attempt, Aniket. Now, is there anyone who would like to contribute something which is not covered by Aniket, or something on his own? No. So now first 35 minutes are over in covering the revision or the summary of the past. Now we'll chant the verses, whatever are covered together, and then proceed for our new discussion. From 26 onwards, we will chant 26 to 226 to 230. Sadidam paramadvaitam swasmadanyasya vastuno bhavat nayyanyadasti kinchit samyak paramartha tattva bodha dashayam. Sadidam sakalam vishwam nana rupam pratitamadnyanat tatsarvam brahmaiva pratyastashesha bhavana dosham. Mrutkarya bhutopi mrudo na bhinnaha kumbhoshti sarvatra tu mrutsvarupat na kumbharupam prithagasti kumbhaha kuto mrusha kalpita nama matraha kenapi mrudbhinnataya swarupam ghatasya sandarshayitum na shakyate ato ghatah kalpita eva mohat mrudeva satyam paramartha bhutam. Sad-Brahma karyam sakalam sadevam Tan-Matra metanna tatonyadasti Asti yo vaktina tasya mohaha Vinirgato nidritavat prajalpaha. So these are the 5 verses we have covered so far. In this verse 230, 230, one word has come which will remind us of the first verse, and that word is Sad-Brahma. Sad-Brahma. Since this verse again reminds us of our first verse, then definitely it needs to be reconsidered. See, as the portion proceeds, we have to give due consideration to the words that are employed in the new portion. So again, the same word is used here. Now, Sad-Brahma, as we have just now heard from Aniket, is related to pure knowledge, etc. But now we will have to reconsider a little deeper level. Sat Brahma. Sat stands for absolute existence. Absolute existence is one without a second. There is no second. When you talk about the word absolute, there is no second at all. Therefore, there is no question of talking about it, discussing about it. The next is the Chit appearing in Sat. The Chit, the pure knowledge, appears in the Sat. Then the absolute existence becomes self-conscious. Because of the knowledge, it becomes self-conscious. And the expression is Aham Brahma. So the Aham Spuranam starts with Chit. the Maya aspect. The immediate expression of Maya aspect here is Aham Spuranam, which is absent in the absolute existence. In the truth, there is no I amness. Therefore, a time must come when this I amness also has to disappear. But of course, this is the last but one level where the I amness will disappear. Till then, I have to evolve. Who is this I am? And there is a great scope for contemplation, starting from I am the body onwards. The I am has to be declutched from all the not self, body, sense organs, pranas, mind, intellect, vasanas, ignorance. The whole lot is not self. And when I identify them as not self and negate them, thereafterwards, I cannot consider them at all for when I am contemplating upon my true nature. When I negate, so negating is most important. Discriminating the self from the not self is one thing, and negating the not self as not I is very important, and that requires a bit practice also. Practice means I don't have to identify with the body. May the body function according to its nature, the perception and the actions. The perceptions may be colored by the vasanas, and that is the system that the vasanas should get exhausted through the mechanism of BMI complex. So the vasanas will get expressed as desires, then it will cause agitations in the mind, and then it will project out as activity to fulfill the desire. So in order that this process should continue undisturbed, I don't have to identify with them. The I is not involved in this process. I was already involved in my past deeds, for which the present one process is only the results that are doled out for me to be experienced. So the I amness starting from the body, I have to discriminate as not self and negate. The whole process is only negating the not self. Assertion becomes incidental, because when I say I am not the body, then I have to say what I am. So to that extent, Sad-Brahma nishkalamaham nacha bhuta sanghaha. When I am denying that I am not this assemblage of matter equipments like body, mind, intellect, then I have to say who I am. I cannot just leave it that I am not this, I am not this, because I am not zero. I am not nothingness. I am something full and complete. Therefore, Tad Brahman Ishkalamaham, that partless Brahman I am, and not this assemblage of matter and equipments. So, this negation and assertion will become the first phase of meditation. And in this assertion is just to support you that you are not nobody, you are something, the truth. But at present, the truth is covered by, veiled by not self. And therefore, you are not able to recognize that truth. Therefore, what is the sadhana that we have to do is uncover. Whatever is covering the truth is to be uncovered. And it is the not self starting from body onwards. So this particular negation of the not self was discriminating the not self from the self and negating the not self is the first phase or level of meditation, in which I am only asserting side by side that not only that I am not this, but I am Brahman, the truth. So this is the first level. But finally, I have to come to the level where where I am the self. Self is existence knowledge. Up to this level, with conscious, deliberate self effort, I can reach the selfhood. That I am the self of the nature of existence knowledge. Up to this level is a self effort, and we gain our natural selfhood in the term self or Atman, which is knowledge, existence, and knowledge. So, this is first part. Now, when we say absolute existence, Sat, Sad-Brahma. So, this Sad-Brahma we have to consider not by itself, because it is not possible to talk about the absolute, but from its lower points uh, we can imagine the sense of absolute existence. It is again for us, it is the sense, whereas the absolute cannot be directly uh, imagined or thought of. But the next level is Chit, which is added to it. And we have seen that the Brahman, the existence becomes self-conscious. So the self-conscious existence is the next level. And this is called as Atman, where there is a knowledge or Chit plus existence. So Satchit Atma is the next level. And from this onwards, we have to see closely Maya aspect, that is Chit aspect, goes on changing. The Chit aspect goes on changing. We have uh, separated the Chit as infinite objectless awareness, and it does not come down. I've given you the chart in which on the right side there is a reference of Chit, and which is said as inherent in all further process. It is inherent but does not involve in any case. It is just inherent anusyuta. This Chit or pure knowledge or awareness is inherent in all the further levels of creation, but it remains intact, untouched by anything else. Whereas the consciousness aspect, the next level is consciousness, which goes down to become the name and form. So this Chit remains as it is, while with reference to some conditioning like Vayu, etc., the consciousness, the same, we can say the same awareness, when seen through the conditioning medium, then it appears as consciousness of. So the consciousness with some objects to be conscious of is the next level, and it is not that the awareness becomes consciousness. Awareness remains as awareness. It is for the observer to look through the conditioning of Vayu, that awareness becomes consciousness. So this prana shakti, which is ensued from consciousness, and it also includes consciousness, is the great power that is responsible for all further duality and the multiplicity. So now this aspect of Maya, which is going down the level, changing itself differently through different upadhis, different conditioning, becomes the world of names and forms. Therefore, intelligence, the hobby of the intellect is causation hunting. And For the intelligent person, he can be, this all names and forms, the creation can be traced back to its cause as Maya. That is the cause with reference to the world. This is only to satisfy the intelligent student. That is not really the cause. The cause is Brahman. But student cannot understand Brahman at this moment. So it can be taken up to a mysterious power which is behind all this creation. So he can go from the names and forms to the five great elements, and from five great elements to three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. So trigunatmika prakriti, and this trigunatmika prakriti, it is that goes further down to the level of names and forms. This trigunatmika prakriti is shown on the left side of the chart, and chit is shown on the right side of the chart. Chit, without changing itself, for the one who is studying this, he can see through Vayu as consciousness, and then this consciousness has different levels. We have made earlier one statement that awareness has no level. Awareness has fixed highest level, whereas the consciousness has different levels. It comes down to the level of body and the world of objects. So this level, there are levels of consciousness, whereas there is no level of awareness. This is to be appreciated, because in our evolution, this is involution from the Brahman to the world of OET or name and form. Now our evolution is from name and form to our true nature as absolute existence. So this evolutionary process, we are explained that through this upadhi, the same thing manifests as this. So manifestations keep on changing, and that causes the early process of creation with the some of the elementary causes that are responsible for the creation. So like three gunas of the Prakriti, and these three gunas, where we are told that at one level they were well balanced. This is called as Guna Samya Sthiti. Guna Samya Sthiti, where all three gunas were balanced. Then from that, the Sattva and Tamas came. Therefore, chart will show you the Sattva Pradhana Prakriti and the Tamo Guna Pradhana, Sattva Tama Pradhana Prakriti. So this tamas has an attraction and the sattva has a repulsion. And in this attraction and repulsion of sattva and tamas rises the rajas, the power. So this is how the process is explained. We don't, it is not necessary to go in much details about the process as such, but what we are, how we have from chit, which is Maya, which is pure knowledge, how it has come down through various upadhis or conditioning to the level of names and forms that constitute the universe. This is one side. This is called as universe. Now the other side is avidya. This avidya is, really speaking, not absence of knowledge, but a very, very little knowledge. Jiva is called as alpadnya. So this alpadnya is even dangerous than no knowledge. Suppose if you have a clean slate, we can write down something meaningful. But if the slate is already written with lot of scribblings, then you can't write on that anything. This fellow, influenced by the ignorance, has a very little knowledge. And that little knowledge is most dangerous. Sampurna kumbho na karoti shabdam. When the pot is full of water, it doesn't make any noise. But if it is half filled or empty, it makes a lot of noise. So likewise, here, this little knowledge makes the fellow confused and he takes it otherwise. So this is Alpadnyaha is the one other term for Jiva. If Ishvara is Sarvajnaha, Jiva is Alpadnyaha. If Ishvara is Sarva Shaktiman, Jiva is Alpa Shaktiman. If the Ishvara is omnipresent, Sarvagata, this fellow is where he is because his body, so he is located at one place, he cannot be anywhere else. So he is limited to that place and time. So likewise, these differences, if you see, the ray of that consciousness enters the individual, Jiva, as and reflects in the intellect as intelligence. This we have seen already. So now, Maya on one side goes down to various levels and finally becomes names and forms of the universe with variety and multiplicity. And avidya here enters the individual, confuses him, creates the duality of thought and the light, and the thought is objectified by the individual. When objectified, duality is created, subject and object. Once you objectify the thought, and that is where he has not identified the thought properly. Thought is not different from consciousness, as wave is not different from water. So you should have understood thought as not different from me, the consciousness. But there, the Maya plays the trick of showing him repeatedly the variety of thoughts, different thoughts, so that his attention is now concentrated on the thought. Then the thought is objectified. This is paying the attention, becoming conscious of, and then the object of consciousness gains the power. The Brahman, when the first knowledge sprang up or raised within itself, he did not consider that as something different. It says, okay, he was awareful of the presence of knowledge, and then at the most, the expression of that awarefulness is I am. The thought as such, I should have understood as not different from me, the consciousness. But the avidya maya shows again and again me that thought where my attention is drawn. When my attention is drawn, I become conscious of thought, and that avidya is successful in making me objectify the thought. When the thought is objectified, then the duality is created. And when the duality is created, thereafterwards, there is no end to any number of thoughts that can be created by Maya. It requires just vasana is a sufficient capital from which it can derive any number of thoughts. And these thoughts will take the individual through sense organs out to the world of objects, where he will identify with certain situations and in which these certain vasanas or desires will be expressed and get fulfilled. So this system, to run this system, the entire scheme has been planned like this. Now, in which the individual got confused and he has come down to the level of I am the body. This I am has identified with the body. When earlier it was Aham Brahma, now here Deho Ham. So in the bhajan that we sang today, Deho Naham, Jivo Naham, pratyaka bhinnam brahmaivaham. So this is the exercise for contemplation. So this is negation of the body and the mind. And when this is negated, what is left out is Brahman. So what is important here we saw is the exercise of discriminating the not self and negating the not self. This is an important exercise that we have been doing it. Now this, I want to highlight this attention because of the Sad-Brahma, that term is again, it has come in this verse 230, which we have gone through, come across in the first verse. Again it has come. In the first verse we have seen Sadidam Paramadvaitam. So Sat is the supreme Brahman. So Sat Idam. So Idam we have taken it down to the self, but self is Brahman. Basically, that Sat stands for absolute existence. The term by itself, the Sat stands for the existence or absolute existence. Absolute existence has become relative when Chit has appeared in it and it has gone down to become the world. And the another level, avidya has appeared into it, gone into the individual and confused the individual, created a duality, and then the individual started seeing the multiplicity of the world. World was already created by Maya, and the individual sense of individuality is created by avidya, where the individual objectifies everything else. So this is the system created for exhaustion of existing vasanas and dole out the necessary experiences to the individual. Now, in this existing system, to evolve myself itself is a great self-effort, and only but for the scriptures and the teachers, it would have never been possible for the individual to think that we can come out of this. It is not necessary that we have to get involved and get stuck up there. We can come out of this. This hope is possible only because of the scriptures. They say, Ashocha Nanvashochasam. No, this is not your plight. You don't deserve this. You are something else. So this is the hope of the scriptures. And it is not just a hope, because scriptures being the means for knowledge, therefore it becomes the right means by which we can learn the Brahma Vidya, and with the Guru's help we can get the elucidation of that, of terms and terminologies used, etc. So that with the help of this Shastra, scripture and the teacher, we can get the knowledge using which I can evolve from the level of I am the body to the level of Aham Brahma. So in the verse 230, this was the point I wanted to highlight, which in the discussion we are not covered for the want of time. But this Sad-Brahma is the term being taken up as the absolute existence. And absolute existence, how it has become the multiplicity, the process, it is all trick of Maya and Avidya. Maya at the totality level and Avidya at the individual level. They both are same, but it's according to application, they are termed differently. Like they are termed as Avyakrita, Pradhana, Prakriti, then Ajnanam, Avidya, Maya. There are so many terms, but each term has got certain function to indicate certain function. So the shade of meaning changes as the term changes. So Avidya and Maya are essentially the same power inherent in Brahman. So now Sad-Brahma we have seen in this verse number 230. Now therefore it says that the effect of Sad-Brahma as its cause is not different from the cause. Maybe in a modified form. We have seen the law of cause and effect, that the effect is nothing but the cause itself in different form. So its appearance may be different, but it is the same thing. So this is indicated in that verse number 230, we have already seen. So sadev, sakalam sadevam tanmatram etat na tatonyat asi. Now when it is said tanmatram, tat stands for Brahman, all right. But as such, we have already seen that Brahman is not at all involved in this. It is the chit aspect, a knowledge aspect, which has come down to the level of names and forms. Therefore, we take this Tan-Matra as Chin-Matra. Chit stands for pure knowledge. All the modifications at different levels of consciousness to the level of names and forms are nothing but pure consciousness only. They are seen differently because of the different upadhis. The same pure consciousness through different conditioning appears differently, but it is essentially nothing but pure consciousness. So this we have uh, discussed last time, that tanmatram etat na tatonyadasti. Therefore, there cannot be anything else. And it is well explained by Aniket that when we have analysis, instead of using the word synthetic, that was my mistake, it is synthesis, analysis and synthesis. If you say synthetic, it is some man-made material in the clothing, etc. So it is not synthetic, it is synthesis, analysis and synthesis. Our 10th chapter of Gita is analytical approach to the world, how the Lord is in all the names and forms, and 11th chapter is a synthesis of all what was described in the 10th chapter. Synthesis where when all the forms, imagine that all forms in the space, if the space is removed from them, how they will look like? All forms will become one big form. With having some mouths are seen, some legs are seen, and all that. So this kind of synthesis is indicated in the 11th chapter. So this is the method of the scriptures to explain it these twofold ways. One is the way of analysis and another is the way of synthesis. So by both these methods, when it is proved that the effect is nothing else than the cause itself, and there is nothing additional to it. So therefore, here bold statement is made that asti iti yo vakti. If somebody says yes, there is something else, what can he say that something else? He will say there is a world of names and forms of multiplicity and variety, and you are talking about the Brahman as an absolute existence, or the infinite consciousness and eternal existence, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam Brahma, as defined by the Upanishad. The Brahman is infinite knowledge and eternal existence. So this is the definition. From that onward, if it is infinite existence, we see the finite objects of the world. So how can you say that they are same? This is one aspect. Then you say that it is one without a second or one. Here there are many. Therefore, one may tempt to say that, yes, apart from your Brahman and Atman, there is a world. If somebody is saying like this, we can clearly say that it is tasya mohaha na vinirgataha. His delusion is not yet ended. Yes, his mind is still under the spell of delusion, and it is the delusory mind that projects the illusions of the world. So this being the case, it is now compared that his talking like this is like the blabbering or twaddle in the sleep. When one is in the sleep, here the word used is nidra, nidritavat prajalpaha. There is a difference between nidra and sushupti. Nidra is a sleep in which you have dreams. Sushupti is a sleep in which you have no dreams. There's a difference. The terms are different. So here nidra is used. So when somebody talks in the sleep, he is blabbering in the sleep, it is meaningless. What he talks, he himself doesn't know. When we wake him up and say, you are talking like this, he will himself wonder whether did he say like that. So this kind of talk in the sleep is equal to the talk of one who says that there is something else than Brahman. You said this whole world is Brahman only. No, we cannot say there is a world as additional to this Brahman. How can you say world is Brahman? World is multiple of variety, whereas the Brahman is one without a second. So there cannot be any comparison. We can say Brahman is also there, world is also there. So if something else is there, if somebody says other than this cause, then it is like talking in the dream, and it only means that the dream itself is an imagination of the mind, not supported by discriminative faculty, therefore it is falsified. Similarly, his talk also is meaningless as it is in the sleep. He is not conscious of it, what he is talking. So this we have already seen in the verse 230. Now we have to see the new verse. Now before going to the new verse, we have covered two verses up to 230. Or is there anything that is still required to be discussed?
Guruji,
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes.
Guruji, Prakarana Granthas are written to explain the teaching in a manner which is not subject to further interpretation, correct? So they are written to help people understand the teachings of the Upanishad and Gita better, and in a clearer manner. And Adi Shankaracharya has taken up that role, and he has explained all the concepts of Gita and Upanishad in Vivek Chudamani. So if he wants to say Chinmatra, why is he referring to it as Tan-Matra in this shloka and leaving it to us to interpret, saying that Tan-Matra actually means Chinmatra? Is there something that I'm not understanding here?
Tat stands for Brahman. We have already seen this. The truth is Brahman only. Therefore, even if we say Chinmatra, it is the ultimate nature of Jiva. Chinmatra is the nature of Jiva, and itself is inherent power of Brahman. So if instead of telling Jiva about that you are Brahman, it is too much to gulp down this truth. Therefore, he is first told you are of the nature of pure consciousness. So this aspect is Chinmatra. So this is first let him understand there are two levels. One is the level to reach up to Ishvara level, where he is purely sattvic, and the knowledge, he is full of that knowledge. So this knowledge, you are Chinmatra. The Jiva's first level of realization is that he is of the nature of pure consciousness. This is one. When he reaches the level of pure consciousness in him, which is objectless and therefore called as Sakshi, he is Sakshi Chaitanya within his body politic. If he realizes this, then he will find that he is the same witness consciousness in all the living beings. And he himself will become Sarva Sakshi. Now, these are the two important levels in between that the Acharya may expect for us to first climb through before he understands Tan-Matra. So now, when he becomes Sarva Sakshi, important, Vedanta says that this Sarva Sakshi is Brahman. The job of Vedanta is, when he comes to a right level, then tell him, this Sarva Sakshi is Brahman only. Brahman himself has become, Brahman itself has become Sarva Sakshi. So now for Jiva, therefore now interpretation again matters. Swamiji has interpreted as pure consciousness, etc. That is because of this only, that let Jiva first understand his nature as pure consciousness. Therefore, Jiva is of the nature of pure knowledge. That is up to, his job is only to reach that and understand that this is his nature. When he becomes the Chit aspect, Chin-Matra, then at that level, Vedanta is accessible to him, which says that this Sarva Sakshi is Brahman. Therefore, the last level is to be revealed by Brahman itself or Vedanta himself, Vedanta Shastra itself. Whereas I have to reach to the level of Sarva Sakshi. To reach the level of Sarva Sakshi, I have to reach the level of Sakshi within me. At this moment, I am first the perceiver, feeler, thinker I. Then I am the egoistic individual I. Then I am the individual I. All these three levels I have to cross and say that I am. This witness is a stepping stone between Mr. Individual, Jiva, and Atma, in between. So we are asked to practice what? That I am a witness. At the level of meditation, I am asked to assume a role of a witness where I practice to observe, not involve, the flow of thoughts that is going on in the mind. Even if it is related to the nature of the self, he has to observe it as a third person, not as a thinker of the thoughts. So, from the thinker of the thoughts to pure consciousness, there is a stepping stone given, a help given for the meditator to practice that. Let the thoughts go on. You don't get involved into it. Just watch the thoughts. So Swamiji's instruction is, watch the mind. You have given the exercise of contemplation to the mind. Now watch the mind, how the mind is going on. So thoughts are entertained by the mind. This fact becomes very clear to you that mind is minding. It is minding. Earlier it was minding the world of OET. Now it is minding the thought on the self, nature of the self. So this thought flow belongs to mind and not to me. So I think is not accepted. Here the role is given of a witness. We are asked to stand apart from the flow of thoughts, be yourself safe from the flow of thoughts, allow the thoughts to go. In the beginning, it is not just easy to think about the nature of the self. We have said that, but the actual process is, as we go to the sleep, it is not immediately the deep sleep. When we go to sleep, first comes the flow of dreams and various imaginations. We can never imagine what we will imagine in the dream. So all those imaginations come. When that whole lot is flown off, then only we enter into a deep sleep. Similarly, here also, when we start our attempt at the seat of meditation, our first immediate effect is, because there is a surface consciousness level is quiet in the waking state, at the seat of meditation, I have withdrawn all my thoughts from the world of OET, and now I have gathered my mind. It has become introvert, it has become gathered, it has become single pointed, and this tuning the mind is now directed to contemplate upon the nature of the self. Then my job is how to just watch the mind, how it is contemplating, how the thoughts are going on. This practice of watching the mind and its contemplative exercise helps me to become a witness. Then I understand that, oh, even in my day to day affairs, I am not involved. I am just a consciousness. And in my presence, the intellect thinks, the mind feels, the body acts and perceives. Therefore, I am not involved in this. So, this is practicing Sakshi Bhav even in our day to day life. So, thus, when we practice at the seat of meditation first, to stand apart from the thought flow. So, now here I was trying to explain the first psychological effect which is required is that when I am quietening my mind and making it introvert, etc., the top surface consciousness becomes silent. When it becomes silent, the subconscious tries to rise up. Like the dreams rise up in that sleep, immediately, lot of unwanted thoughts, tamasic thoughts, rajasic thoughts will try to flood like lava. And we are asked here also, keep yourself safe, stand away from the lava of thoughts and let the thoughts flow. This is first a cleansing of the mind. Before the mind could be qualified to undertake contemplation, it is required to be cleared up of all these suppressions, oppressions, and what are the things we have kept in the mind, not allowed them to express during the waking hours. Now that waking hours are silent, I am awake, but I am not interacting with the waking world. Then that silent surface of the waking encourage the subconscious surface where there are a lot of things dubbed as not good for now to express. So I have suppressed so many things. All those ideas will come up. And a novice may wonder, what is the thing? I am at the seat of meditation, and what are the ideas that I am facing now? Those ideas are necessary purgation of all the rot from the mind. Make the mind free from all these, and then the mind, when it becomes empty, you can initiate a line of thinking which is related to the nature of the self. Whatever you have reflected earlier, whatever you remember the words of the teacher or statements in the scripture, bring them and ask the mind to contemplate upon that. So the mind which is cleared of all these suppressions, operations of within, when that is cleared off, so the subconscious is cleared, now the individual can initiate a line of thinking related to the nature of the self, and then the contemplation will start. So here, already he is asked to stand away from the lava of thoughts. Now it is further extended. Don't involve even in the thoughts of the self. Let the mind contemplate. You have given that exercise to the mind. You are not contemplating. Your mind is made to contemplate. Why? Because you want mind to be free from thought. And the procedure for that, to make the mind free from thought, is first declutch the mind from the variety and multiplicity of thoughts to a single thought of the self. Reduce the quantity of thoughts. Improve the quality of thought. Instead of contemplating upon the nature of the objects, dhyayato vishayan pusa, instead of that, you meditate on the nature of the self. Quality is changed, direction is changed from outward to inward. Likewise, when we have improved the whole stuff called mind, then now the mind is qualified to undertake this thought of the self. Then I have to watch the mind. This is the instruction. Then I'm watching the mind, I am not the mind. And what is the business given to the mind is not my business, it is mind's business. So this encourages a sense of witness in me. When I am established in this sense of witness, then I will understand, because I have to practice this at all levels of physical, mental, intellectual. Every time when thought comes, I am only the witness. I am not the thinker. Let the intellect thinks, and that is the fact. In the presence, yesterday only we have seen that in the presence of the self, the subject, intellect thinks, mind feels. Not I feel and I think. This I fellow is a fake fellow. Is unnecessarily introduced by mistake, but my presence is required. Now, this presence, since it is not involved, but its presence is vital for all the things to operate, BMI to operate. Therefore, this presence is independent of what it is illumining and what is the illumined things are doing. It is very much independent. To tune up to that level of witness consciousness, I have to practice myself as the witness of thoughts. First, the junk of thoughts that will flow out and go for the good, and then initiate the line of thinking on the nature of the self, and then watch the mind. So when I come to this level of witness, then, and when I practice that, even during the waking hours, even in my interaction, I will have to functionally involve in the vyavahara as such while interacting with the world. Now and then, I have to remind myself, I am not involved in this. I am only a functionary. It is the intellect which is analyzing, it is the mind which is checking, it is the body which is interacting with the world, and I'm just watching it. I'm the witness. One has to be just suggest this to himself. So he may be doing all these things all right. He may be interacting with the world, but at the corner of his mind, there is an awareness that I am the witness. Like an actor who is acting the role, and while acting the role of a beggar, he has to have the beggarly life, listen to all people's insults and abuses, and all this, a corner of his mind is an awareness that I am not the beggar. I am only assuming, I have accepted to assume the role of a beggar. Therefore, I am a beggar. I am not actually the beggar. After this class, after this talk, or after this acting of drama, I have to purchase certain things before going home and all that. He has all of those ideas are there. Therefore, this awareness that I am not the actor is very important. That saves him from the effects of the role. A role may be very bad role, a role may be a very elevating role, like a king who gets salutes from everyone and who is in the luxury and all that, his court, and everybody salutes him. So he may again get, boasted about that. So to save himself from all the extremities in the Vyavahara, what we are affected is when it goes to extreme sorrow, when it goes to extreme success, then we are tend to get influenced by that and lose our level. So in order to maintain that level, at the corner of our mind, there has to be an awareness that I am not involved in this business. I am only the witness. In my presence, the body, mind, intellect are working according to their nature, and I'm only watching. So the sense of watching may be there. I'm just observing, so that the the transaction will take place properly, not leading to anything unwanted. So a transaction has to take place intelligently, and to present myself as intelligence not involved. The light is never involved in the illuminated. So I am only taking that, practicing that at the seat of meditation, and then applying it now and then. So like we saw while watching the movie, the person gets involved into hero and heroine and the villain, but when it goes too much, he only sits back in a seat and comes to senses. Likewise, When the things are going extreme, remind to yourself, you are not involved in any one of this. You are only a witness thereof. That is the immediate sign of consciousness, that consciousness is not involved. So here we have seen the implication of the word Tan-Matra. As such, Acharya wants to say he doesn't want to compromise with anything less than that. Tat stands for Brahman, Brahmaiva Satyam, Brahma Satyam. This Shrungeri Mutt has got the quarterly or bi-monthly magazine as Tattva-loka. And this Tattva-loka, the motto of this Tattva-loka is Brahma Satyam, Brahmaiva Satyam, full stop. There is no question of world and all that mithya, etc. Brahma Satyam, Brahmaiva Satyam. So likewise, we have to decide. We don't have to bother about what is going on. Have a watch, that's all. This watch, your presence will make the BMI function properly, not any way they like. So what is the transaction? What is the deal going on? They will be intelligent enough to go through that deal because the memory will help them properly. When I'm watching, the boss is watching. And when boss is watching, subordinates will have to do their job properly. They can't do it any way they like. So this watching is important. I am paying my attention. This is my job. Attention. When the consciousness becomes extrovert, it is called attention. So maybe that I am attentive of what is going on, but I'm not involved in it. So this is a practice of witness in our day-to-day life. And when this practice aided with the meditation, where you actually try to be away from the thought flow and try to be the witness, then you understand that, oh, I'm like the light. I'm not involved in anything. Whatever may be illuminated and its nature, the light is not concerned about it. So I am the light of consciousness, which is not involved in any thinking, perceiving, feeling, etc., much less its effects and results. This attitude of witness is a stepping stone to reach the last one. The last one is Brahman, Tan-Matra. But at this moment, my nature is Chin-Matra, pure consciousness. To reach that level of pure consciousness, I need to play the role of a witness. When I practice the witness role, then I am in line with or in harmony with my true nature as witness consciousness. So this will lead us, this technique in meditation, to watch the mind or to witness is the stepping stone. That is why it is useful. Once I come to know that I am of the nature of pure consciousness, who is not involved, but whose mere presence is enough for body, mind, intellect to act according to their nature and do the job properly, they will not make any mistake. The system provides for that. At time, properly, either from inside the memory will help you, or from outside in the incident, somebody will come and guide you. So the transaction will take place on its own, and you don't have to poke your nose there unnecessarily. So this idea you have to practice during the transactions with the world. So coupled with this and the practice of witness at the seat of meditation will help you reach to your first level of realization, called as Atma Prachiti, which is of the nature of pure consciousness. And then the next lap and the final is Brahma Prachiti. So Tan-Matra is Brahman Eva, and Chin-Matram is pure consciousness Eva. So Jiva, it is too much for him to say you are Brahman and I am Brahman. If somebody says it is not the japa that is recommended, it is only the contemplation, and Aham Brahmasmi is not japa. Shivom is not japa. It is to be understood through reflection and then through contemplation. And there are steps. So Atma Prachiti is first level, in which I understand myself to be the witness consciousness. Then I become all witness of the entire universe. And when I become all witness, Sarva Sakshi, there the Vedanta works. Vedanta tells me that this Sarva Sakshi is Brahman. And that is enough for me. He said Tattvamasi, and I became that. Tan-Matra. But that level of appreciation is that I am already established in pure, all-pervasive consciousness as a mere witness. So this was that was a very good query about Tan-Matra and Chinmatra. And even ordinarily, there is nothing wrong in replying to the situation as you would reply ordinarily. But how fast you come back to your real level of Sachit will indicate your progress in the spirituality. Therefore, immediately it is not possible. And for the one who is jnani, he will not respond to it at all, and he will let the thing go. Even if his body has to act, he will allow the body to act. If he has to talk something, that speech will also be managed. He will not do anything. His equipments will manage, because now he has handed over this all control to the Prakriti, vasanas in him, etc. Whatever is inside mechanism, he has handed over to it, because basically it is the Prakriti which works. He is not subject to acting. He is actionlessness. Therefore, he will allow the Prakriti to operate as it is, and he will have no objection for that. This is the reaction from the Jnani. But now we are neither Ajnani nor Jnani. We want to be Jidnyasu, who are desirous of knowledge. So there is a transitory level possible. So in this level, when you are wake up to that situation, you will do whatever is required to be done as an ordinary individual there with a given role. And after having done that, when you are with yourself, then you can recall back what has happened and where you stand in it and what is your nature. So basically, this practice of falling back to your nature has to be cultivated. So in the event, you may behave as you are behaving now to start with. But later on, how fast you come back to this level of awareness of Satchit is what is important. What is important is how fast you come back to your real nature. At this moment, because you are given the apparels of mind and body, and you are to face the situation, you are assuming different roles, you are assuming different dresses and meeting the situation. This is all right. You are playing the drama, you are acting the role. But how far you are aware that you are not the role, you are only a role player. This discrimination has to be maintained even while playing the role. And I said only at the corner of your mind, not that very fully conscious about that you are a role player and you are not the role. You have to identify with the role and play the drama. But at the corner of it, I said just there has to be some vague awareness that I am none of these. The problems of the beggar are not my problem. The problem of the father are not my problem. The problem of the son with reference to my father is not my problems. They are the problems related to the roles. And this discrimination has to be maintained first. Therefore, when you are playing a role, we must play the role to the script of the role. What makes a good son for his father? And accordingly, he will solve the problem. But at all the time or after the event, he must come back to this situation. I have only played to the best of my ability and capacity the role of a son. I am not the son. So with reference to is what is going on among all our relationships. With reference to father, I am the son. With reference to son, I am the father. Now these relationships and the roles will keep changing, and we might have to play to the script of the role, whatever it is. But maintaining this awareness that I am not the role, I am the role player. And the role player has nothing to do with the role and its problems. Most important consideration it is this. So as a husband, I might have a problem with my wife. As a father, I might have a problem with my son. But they are different roles. And I'm not all the time father. Only when my son approaches me, then I assume a role of a father. I deal with the son. These dealings may be problematic, may be miserable, may be good, bad, whatever it is. But then this awareness that I'm playing a role will keep me safe from so many confusions and so many problems related to these relationships. So we will come back to the balance by saying that I have played my role. Whatever I am supposed to do, I did it to the best of my capacity and knowledge. And then you are out of it. So this is very important. And this has nothing to do with your love relationships, meaning your relationship should be definitely moistened with love or affection or intimacy. So this aspect with the transaction has to be maintained, but at the heart of heart, you must remind yourself. You don't have to declare it outside. You have to remind yourself that this is only the role that I have to play. Situation demands me the role. Situation indicates to me that this is the role I have to play in under the situation, and I play the role. Assume there is a script for the role. So our scriptures give the script of role as well as the script for the role player. We don't look at the role player. We are only involved in the role. So dharma tells me what you should do and what you should not do. That is all related to the script of the role. As a particular husband, what you are supposed to do, what you are not supposed to do, what makes a good husband. The religion will tell me what I do and what I should not do. But what I know and what I must know also is told to us by religion in the philosophical limb of religion. And that if I do not understand, then definitely these actions are going to sink you down. So this is very important thing to be aware of a role player. This is, I have come one step down from witness to the role player, that assuming the role when required and then coming out of the role when not required. So this ability to attach and identify with the role when required and detach and withdraw your identification from the role as if you are not concerned with it when the transaction is off. So this idea of attaching and detaching is the essence of our religion. Yes, Aniket.
In a previous discussion, we said that when we wake up in the morning, try to identify the moment that we wake up. This is point number one. Okay. Point number two is Brahman plus Maya, absolute knowledge, pure consciousness. This involution that happens, can it be compared to the personal experience of waking up? This is this thing, because the problem is, when I say Brahman with Maya, then absolute awareness, then pure consciousness, it seems very far off. But if I can relate to that experience as I waking up, then I have that experience. Is that thinking correct?
No, thinking is correct, but becoming aware at the moment of waking is very, very difficult. It is almost impossible for an ordinary individual. Either he is asleep or he is awake. When awake, he is awake to his individuality. Therefore, this is the very sacred moment between getting up from the sleep and awakening to the waking world. There's a very narrow gap in between, and to catch that is most difficult task. And that is why, if I remember correctly, I've referred in this particular reference that we say the children are the form of God. The children are form of God, and if you want to see the God, watch them as they wake up from the sleep. They are in a cradle, a little child of say 5, 6 months old. It's in the cradle, and there's some toy hanging above. So watch the child when it wakes up, meaning opens its eyes, and when it reacts to the toy, there is a gap. And that gap, to watch that gap is to see the Lord in the child. The Lord is neither a waker nor a sleeper. He is in between waking and dreaming. There is a gap where there is pure consciousness. Between a sleep, the dream and the deep sleep, there is a gap. Between deep sleep and waking up, there is a gap. This gap is very little and therefore almost difficult to catch that moment. But you can make this project and observe the child waking up. When child starts reacting to the outer situation, and when child wakes up from the sleep, there is a gap. In that, if you observe the child's eyes, the sight will be like Ramana Maharshi. You'll see that he is neither looking at any particular object. Eyes are open, which means the sleep is over. It is not asleep, but it is not yet one with the waking world. So this is a very critical moment which we want to catch in our own case. It is extremely difficult, but for the time being, watch this. This is a very good exercise. You can see the God in the child himself, where it is neither asleep nor awake to the world. And that very sacred moment in between is worth watching. The face of the child is like that of a realized person. He is there in the waking world for others to see him, but he is not looking at anybody particularly. His eyesight is not fixed at any particular object. He doesn't objectify anything. For him, everything is himself. So this kind of looking you can see in the child. And then check for yourself that this is what you are in that sacred moment. You are you have given up the role of a deep sleeper, but not yet assumed the role of a waker. And there is a gap in between. In that gap, you are pure consciousness. So there is always this gap idea is most important. Between two thoughts, there is a gap where there is consciousness. Between two breaths, there is a gap. You have exhaled the breath, and before taking in, there is a gap. In that gap, there is pure consciousness. So to check that gap is, particularly at the time of waking, is very difficult. So at this moment, don't try to correlate this. Basically, we have to only see that there is a gap, a transitory moment where it is neither earlier state nor next step, and in between there is nothing but the pure consciousness. Even in the Japa Yoga also, we are chanting a name of the Lord. When we have once said Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, there is a gap. Before you chant again, Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, then there is a gap. So this gap is Nirguna Brahma and the name is Saguna Brahma. So this is a transition where it's a question of our attention. Immediately it is not possible. Don't try to watch the gap. Do the japa properly till you are fully saturated with all the contents of the japa, what it suggests, etc. And when mind is fully acquainted and matured with the name, then shift your attention, let the mind chant and continue the japa, and you watch only the gap. When the japa is over, watch. Concentrate all your attention to the gap in between, and one will become the pure consciousness without any thought. Because japa is also a thought. We have only changed for the, instead of a thought of the objects, OET, you have taken the name of the Lord as the thought. But in between two thoughts, successive thoughts, there is a gap, and gap there is, first thought is over, second thought is yet to rise, and there is a gap, and that gap is without thought, and without thought it is pure consciousness, with thought it is conditioned consciousness. That is the only thing. See, now in only revising our portions, we are meeting once in 2 months. This is a big gap, and therefore our first session is over.
When I am going to deep sleep, now there is a step that means from waking state to dream state to deep sleep state. So it's a process. Means it's not happening instantly that I go from waking state to dream to deep sleep state. Same way, when I am waking up from deep sleep state, I come to the dream state, and then
Right,
from dream state I come to the waking state.
right,
So that Aniket and then Mohini, what they were referring to, that when I'm coming from deep sleep state at that time, it's a gradual process. So at that time, remembering that thing, it is not in my hand. And also, we have also discussed earlier time that it is the vasana that which is responsible for my
waking up.
for the waking up state. So this is what I would like to contribute on this point. Hari Om.
Yes, very good. So we are, just for the sake of our discussion, we have said waking up from the deep sleep, but the process is from waking to the dream, from dream to the deep sleep state, from deep sleep state back to the dream, early morning, the dawn, the dreams supposed to be true, and then back to the waking. So this process is correct in the same. So we may say that instead of waking from the deep sleep, we can say waking from the dream. So initiated by the vasanas from the deep sleep state, when the vasanas are disturbed, you enter into the dream state of mental imagination. The mind is tickled by the vasanas, and then you come to the waking state, which belongs to the Lord. The waking world you have not created. The dream world you might have projected of your own. So this process, the sequence is right. And regarding the gap, whatever you said is, of course, your contribution was quite all right. It has filled up the gaps of our discussions. So now we will stop here for the first session. We have only warmed up ourselves and with certain queries discussed for that. And the second session, we will go in for the new text, new verses. We'll stop here. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Mritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.